Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. May peace be upon you. This is Edward Ahmed Mitchell, the Deputy Director of the Council on American Islamic Relations, welcoming you to today's episode of CAIR on Air, the Muslim Action Hour. Thank you so much for joining us. A special thank you to our listeners on American Muslim 360. I'm here with my co-host, CAIR National's Communications Coordinator, Ayan Ajeen. Assalamu alaikum, Ayan. How are you?
Assalamu alaikum, Edward. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well, alhamdulillah. So, Ayan, you run the program. I just work here. And so I believe, inshallah, today we're going to have a program. We're going to catch people up on what's going on in the news for the Muslim community. This is only February, but it's been a very busy month for American Muslims. We've got some positive news to share with you all today about some developments. So, inshallah, we're going to talk about that. But first, we want to note that we are almost halfway through Black History Month, right? And, you know, Black History Month is incredibly important to our society, for too often, as we all know, the contributions that African Americans have made to our nation, to our country, to our society have been ignored, minimized, or erased outright from history. And so it's very important that every generation, and even adults, are reminded of the contributions that the Black community has made to our country, and that includes the Black Muslim community. But I dare say that after last year, after we saw our country grapple even more directly with issues of racial injustice, racial violence, especially in policing, that Black History Month is all the more important this month. And so we at CAIR and many other organizations are really trying to think of ways we can do something unique for Black History Month and make sure that we are both educating the community and inspiring the community. And so we've launched our campaign this month, Black History Month, Upon Their Shoulders. Ayan, do you want to tell us a bit about the campaign, and I'll jump in as well?
Yeah, so through the campaign, we're opening it up for people, especially we want to target the youth. We would like the youth to contribute to this campaign. We're opening it up to people to send us someone that they think, a modern activist or someone from history that they think has contributed to Black civil rights in this country. And we want you guys to send in their name and a quote from them, from that activist. And
a quote about them, actually.
Oh, a quote about them. Okay. And we want to feature this throughout the month. We're going to be featuring the activists. And I think we've talked about maybe bringing on some of the contributors. Like, if we would like to hear directly from the people who are sending in these quotes, why they chose the activists that they did.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, yeah, the idea, if we can scroll back up, is that we want you, the Muslim community, especially youth, young people, to try to think of African Americans, past or present, who have contributed to our nation's civil rights, political, social progress, right? And there's so many to choose from. And we call this the Upon Their Shoulders campaign because really, if you think about it, so many of the privileges that all Americans enjoy today resulted from the struggles, the sacrifices, the successes of African American activists who came before us. And by the way, so much of the civil rights work we do today is modeled after African American activists who came before us. That includes CAIR and the work that we do. And so we really stand upon their shoulders, hence the name of the campaign. So we want you, especially young people in high school or younger, to think of, research and identify African American activists, past or present, who have contributed to our nation's progress, upon whose shoulders we stand. You're going to send their name to us, and you're going to write a quote about them, about why they are important, why they're noteworthy, why we need to recognize them this month. And then, inshallah, CAIR will post the quote you've written about the person along with their picture and your picture, inshallah, as part of our Black History Month Upon Their Shoulders campaign. And we especially encourage you to think of people who aren't the usual people you would think of, right? Dr. King, incredibly important, right? But he wasn't the only civil rights activist, right? Malcolm X, incredibly important. May Allah grant him the highest rank of paradise. But he's not the only Black Muslim activist who existed, right? So we want you to go a little deeper. Think of the names and research the names that people don't usually always talk about, especially in the media, or that you'll hear about in your history books. There are so many people whose names that are not as well known, but were just as important to advancing progress in this nation. So I want you to think about it deeply, do some research, identify some names, send us the name, and write a quote about them, why they're important to not only the Muslim community, but America at large, how their contributions have helped us. And you can literally go all the way back to before the start of American history if you want, if you can identify someone, to early American history, middle American history, or people who are activists alive working right now, inshallah. Whoever you want, pick the person, send the quote, and then CAIR will choose the ones that we think are really good and effective and on point, and share those as part of our Upon Their Shoulders campaign, inshallah. And Ayan, where can they go to upload this information? You can go online to submit the information, and I think we can put the URL in the comments.
Yeah, I'm gonna put the link to this page in the comments section. But I also want to point out that we're encouraging people to actually not submit Brother Malcolm X's name, because we're gonna have a program specifically on Malcolm X towards the end of the month. So we would like to see different names, because we're going to have a specific day to honor Brother Malcolm X.
Yes. And we actually, the first submission we got, Ayan, we already got some, was Brother Malcolm. So we've got him already. We've got him covered, alhamdulillah. So yes, on February 21st, which is the anniversary of his martyrdom, we are inshallah going to hold a special event honoring his memory and his contributions, and thinking more deeply about what he means to the work we do today. And we want to do that by interacting with people who knew him or saw him speak. And so it'll be a very special program guided by and anchored by elders in our community, especially the Black Muslim community, to get their perspective on Brother Malcolm, inshallah. That'll be February 21st at 3 p.m. online, inshallah. We'll be sending out notices about that. But in the meantime, to get to this page, you go to cair.com/ there you go, Black-History-Month. Alhamdulillah. So very important month. And I think it's important for the Muslim community, especially to participate in this month, especially Muslims who are not African American. Make sure you are participating and that your kids are participating in this month and learning about the contributions of those who came before us. Now, Ayan, I understand that in terms of some of the news we've been dealing with this week, not everyone is happy about Black History Month, and I think we had an issue in a certain state. Can you tell us about what happened in the state of Utah?
So at a charter school in Utah, parents had complained about the Black History Month curriculum. So the school, in response to a few complaints, they sent out a form that would allow parents to opt out of having their students learn Black History Month curriculum. Of course, they received a lot of backlash from that. So then they retracted that, and they are no longer allowing parents to opt out of learning about the curriculum, or allowing parents to take their children out of learning about the curriculum. But I think just the idea that we obviously welcome that they retracted that, but the bigger problem is the fact that they thought that it was okay to even offer that, offer that choice, because, and I will say that the parents use the excuse of their, this is within their civil rights, that they did not want their children to be learning certain things. But I find that very bizarre, because who fought for most of the civil rights that we currently have, right? And that's like
irony abounds.
Exactly. And this it's not even you're learning about the contributions of Black people in this country. You're learning about Black excellence, and the most of the movements that we have today originated from the civil rights movement. And for parents to think that, I don't even understand where it comes from, where that belief came from, that they don't want their children to learn about this. What is controversial about, about Black history? What's controversial about the rights that they, or the movements that they contributed to? So it's I think very bizarre to me that was even something that they wanted.
It's bizarre, but it's almost, to some extent, I mean, for me anyway, not completely surprising. It's the part that surprises me is they said it out loud in the year 2021. I figured there were probably a significant minority of people in this country who have no regard for Black History Month, who don't want their kids to learn about or participate in it, but their manners and common sense just tells them to let it go, and they ignore it. And they don't take the step of asking the school to let their kids out of it, right? That's the remarkable thing, that number one, they had the objection in the first place. And number two, they said it out loud to the school. And number three, the school gave in, right? I mean, it's three levels of bad decisions. But I mean, it just goes to show you why Black History Month is important. I mean, there are people in this country who grew up with an educational system that taught them a very warped version of American history, where the early American pioneers, traveling out west, were completely honorable and noble people and who did nothing wrong, and they were pursuing religious freedom and advancing progress. And you missed the part about the genocide of Native Americans for gold. You missed the part about the treatment of African Americans, of slaves. You ignore that or gloss over that. And in the South in particular, I know that the history books that we received as young people, have a very, very warped history of things from the 1860s before and onward. And so when you think about adults, who grew up in the 1960s, 70s and received this alternate version of American history, well, of course, they're not going to want to hear about Black History Month. Of course, they're going to be hostile to it because it's a history they weren't exposed to and they have no interest or respect for. And that's exactly why their kids need to be exposed to it, why their kids need a more fulsome understanding of American history, which is completely dependent on and interconnected with Black history. And so we're glad to hear the school reversed course. But this issue, this fight over education, it doesn't just happen with Black History Month. I mean, we've seen this fight over the teaching of religious courses, right? We've seen people throw a fit when high school textbooks teach people about basic Islamic beliefs or Muslim history in a way that is even mildly fair or neutral. And so, turning our schools into a battleground for debate is really just the next and predictable state of polarization in our country, that even kids can't just go to school and learn facts without it being politicized and polarized and influenced by the racism that we see resurgent today. But again, the good news is the school reverse course, the kids will have to learn about Black History Month like everyone else, and hopefully that will benefit them and maybe even their parents.
Yeah, I would even say that the history that they're learning now in school it's a diluted version of history, right? And even that was objectionable to them. Right. But you mentioned that this isn't really surprising, that you would expect people to have pushback. I am surprised that the school at first allowed it, though, because I do expect parents to come in with like those biases, but I don't expect like these people who run our schools to be as ignorant as the parents and kind of give them a way out. Like,
and I wonder in this case, I mean, I think you noted at the beginning that the school may be a private school. Charter school. Yeah. So I wonder if they felt, some level of independence or dependence on, who the people who are paying their fees. I mean, a public school, obviously, you're, depending on taxes and your government institution, so you're not really subject to the whims of, of the people in the way that a private school is. So that may have something to do with it as well, which is a whole nother issue and discussion about charter schools. But anyway, so that's good news number one. Now, I believe good news number two relates to another thing involving the educational system, particularly involving Muslims, or at least the athletic side of our educational institutions.
So there has been a nationwide rule change that affects Muslim volleyball players. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so in Tennessee last year, a Muslim teenager was competing on a volleyball team, and she was banned from competing because she was wearing a hijab. And she didn't have a written letter with prior approval to wear the hijab. And the national rules, as well as the state rules, said that any sort of head covering, including a hijab, is forbidden, not allowed, unless you have some sort of pre-written approval. And so, we learned about this. The broader Muslim community learned about this. There's a great organization in Tennessee called AMAC, the American Muslim Advisory Council. They assisted the family directly in trying to address this issue. We also got into this, and we met with and spoke with the National High School Association that governs these rules to discuss why this rule needed to change, to hear what their perspective was. And they were very friendly. I think they recognized this is a problem, and they made a pledge to us. They were going to try to get this rule changed. They wanted to hear our thoughts about how the rule could change, and we gave them some advice about what we thought would be the best solution. In our mind, that is that everyone knows what a hijab is. There's no reason that you should ever be banned from competing because of a hijab, and there's no reason you need to jump through the extra hoop of getting approval beforehand to wear a hijab and carrying a letter with you all the time. You should just have that automatic approval to wear religious clothing like a hijab that is, so widely worn, so widely known, and that should be the end of it, right? You shouldn't have to be embarrassed and humiliated whenever you show up for a game that you have got to pull out your papers and show them to the referee, right? That makes no sense. If the referee sees you got a hijab on, the rules should say that's allowed, and that should be the end of it. No one should even have to talk to you about it.
That's literally like you're asking for permission to practice your religion.
Right. Every time you go play a game. I mean, that's just, it's crazy. So anyway, so the rule has now been amended. Now it's very clear that Muslim women can wear hijabs. And the other thing we emphasized to the association was that the rule needs to be changed, not just to address the hijab issue, but also people of other faiths, Sikhs who wear turbans or Jews who wear kippas, right? That they should also be able to wear their religious headgear without having to jump through hoops. And so, that the rule changes happen. So this is a great victory for the Muslim community, and it's a great victory for CAIR, for AMAC, the American Muslim Advisory Council, and most importantly, this family. Because some families, they experience discrimination. They just say, you know what, whatever, I'm not going to deal with it. I'm going to ignore it. I'll bring a note next time, right? But this family was brave enough to say, no, this is wrong. This is unacceptable. They called AMAC for help, and they got help, alhamdulillah. And it's very good that the whole Muslim community came together to address this issue, as one united voice in support of one united position. That's what we got to do. Even with different organizations, different states, that's okay. But when we all put our voices together to say, this is wrong, it's got to change, we can really impact some positive change, inshallah. Yeah. So that's good news number 2.
And I see that as like the power of representation, like that family, they were faced with a problem, and what they did now that allows, representation for a lot of other Muslims across the country. So that kind of leads into good news number 3. Zahra Muhammad, she was elected as the head of the Muslim Council of Britain, the MCB, and she's going to be the first female leader. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we got this news last week, and we issued a congratulatory statement to her, and I believe she responded on Twitter to thank CAIR for that. And I think this is obviously an important historic moment for the Muslim community in Britain. Very important moment for women leadership within the Muslim, female leadership within the Muslim community. And I think, more importantly than that, part of the reason we wanted to congratulate her is that Muslim organizations, Muslim civic organizations around the world, we believe really have to continue to strengthen our ties with each other, especially in the wake of rising global Islamophobia. I mean, if you look on every continent, you have a government, more than one really, engaged in various forms of state-sanctioned Islamophobia. We've got China committing a horrific genocide against Uyghur Muslims, locking Uyghur Muslims in concentration camps, raping Uyghur Muslim women, forcibly sterilizing them with shots, banning them from praying, making them eat pork, demolishing mosques. This is evil. This is a genocide, an unprecedented widespread genocide unseen since, you could say, World War II. It is truly evil, and the Chinese government is perpetrating this with impunity. You go to Myanmar, which has now had the government overthrown by a military coup, where Rohingya Muslims were ethnically cleansed a few years ago and are now living in refugee camps across the border from Myanmar because the government there, the military government, which was supported by Aung San Suu Kyi, engaged in ethnic cleansing and has gotten away with it so far. You go to European countries, where from Austria to France to Hungary, you've got to the Netherlands, to Denmark, you've got European countries that are enforcing various anti-Muslim laws. Either it's banning halal food or requiring Muslims to shake hands as a condition for with the opposite sex as a condition for citizenship, to banning hijabs, to closing down Islamic private schools, shutting down anti-Islamophobia organizations. It's nuts, and it's happening in Europe, a supposed beacon of freedom and democracy. And then, of course, you go to a place like India, where you've got a far-right, extremist, racist, bigoted government led by Mr. Modi, and you've got committing horrific violence against Indian Muslims. And then in Kashmir, the same thing. They're committing horrific violence against Muslims there. And so I say all that to say that there is global Islamophobia being perpetrated all around the world. Muslim governments, by and large, not all, but Muslim governments are not doing much, if anything, to counter this, right? You don't see many Muslim governments speaking up against China. You don't see many Muslim governments doing anything about what's going on in Europe, not that they even can. And so when Muslim governments can't take action to address these issues, it falls upon Muslim civic society organizations around the world to address these issues, right? CAIR can address these issues. MCB in Britain can address these issues. There are French Muslim organizations that can, CCF, I believe, that can work to address these issues. So that's why it's important for us not only to celebrate our sister in Britain, who's now the leader of the council there, not only congratulate her, but to work with her to make sure that Muslim civic society organizations around the world are communicating and collaborating with each other to counter global Islamophobia. Because if Muslim governments aren't going to do it, if our countries are not going to do it, these Western governments are not going to do it, then we as individuals and organizations have to do what we can. So we're very happy for her, proud of her, and we look forward to working with her, inshallah, to advance positive progress for all people around the world, inshallah. So that was good news item number 3, Aya. Do we have a 4? Because I can take more good news, but we've got a lot. Anything else we need to celebrate?
I think that's enough for today. Inshallah, we're going to be, we have this show every Tuesday and Thursday at 3 o'clock. But again, I want to remind everyone of the special show we're having this month on Sunday, the 21st, correct?
Yes, Sunday the 21st at 3 p.m. inshallah, to honor Brother Malcolm and hear from some of the elders who knew Brother Malcolm, interacted with him, and hopefully take some lessons about, what he did and what we can learn today. Because I suspect if Brother Malcolm was alive today and he could see how American Muslims were confronting the problems of today, he'd be really happy about some things, and I suspect critical about some things. So we hope to channel as much as we can, inshallah, to make ourselves better. And also, Ann, can you put back up the Black History Month page one more time, where people can submit their nominations, and we can also put that in the comments. I believe it's there. Yes, it's in the comments. Wonderful. Yeah. So yeah, and just a reminder, especially to our young people, participate in the campaign, submit your quote, submit the name of the person you're picking, you're nominating, and also we're going to ask you to send a picture of yourself once we approve your quote so we can release all that publicly. Join CAIR's Black History Month Upon Their Shoulders campaign. We will be running this until the end of the month, inshallah. You can go to cair.com/black-history-month to pick an activist, past or present, who has contributed to our country, and then write your inspirational quote about why they are so important to us, inshallah.
Yeah, and if you submit sooner rather than later, then we have more time to invite you onto the show and hear from you directly.
Absolutely, inshallah, absolutely. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for today's episode of CAIR On Air, the Muslim Action Hour. Inshallah, we'll see you on Thursday at 3 p.m. And as always, if you have suggestions for programs you'd like us to conduct, topics you want us to cover, email us at info@cair.com. Until then, inshallah, assalamu alaikum. May peace be upon you.